Woman that I'd never heard of until today named Melissa Link. She is a county commissioner down there in Athens, Georgia. And during one of these county meetings, she decided to use her time, her platform, as an elected official in the community where Laken was brutally murdered. She decided to devote her public comment, for the record, we have the video that I'm going to tweet out here in a short while. She decided to use that time to rail against every political opponent or cause that she doesn't like that she could possibly summon or muster in an absolutely disgusting rant that has nothing to do with the memory of Laken Riley and nothing even to do with the circumstances surrounding her murder. She wanted to talk about everything else, every political hobby horse under the sun, other than the policies that led to a beautiful woman being brutalized and beaten beyond recognition. Her skull was disfigured by this beating. This woman, Melissa Link, one of the county commissioners, well, she just said this in Cut 41.
A place that holds so many happy memories for me is now forever tainted by violence, and I am as disgusted by the crime as I am by the hysterical glee with which so many have seized upon this tragedy to promote division, bigotry, and hate. This tragedy offers yet another reminder that monsters are real, and they come in all shapes and sizes. With terrifying regularity, they come in the form of white men with weapons of war fueled by mental illness, bigotry, and right-wing conspiracy theory who slaughter classrooms full of school children, congregants in churches, temples, and mosques, hapless shoppers and revelers at concerts, nightclubs, festivals, and parade routes. Mass murders that have become so routine they are met with only thoughts and prayers from the cowardly Republican legislators, governors, and judges who enable unfettered access to such weapons of war. And every day, the monsters come in the form of young men behind the wheels of big trucks and fast cars who ignore the rules of the road, endangering the public with impunity, often walking away from fatal crashes with barely a slap on the wrist.
None of this has anything to do with Laken Riley's killing. She pivots right away from that to say, I'm as disgusted by the crime. Is she really? As I am by the hysterical glee with which so many have seized upon this tragedy to promote division, bigotry, and hate. I guess if you are against illegal immigration, have a problem with sanctuary jurisdictions, feel like this murder should have never happened because an illegal immigrant apparently committed it, you are guilty of division, bigotry, and rape, and hate rather, and glee. She gets to rape later, by the way. There's another soundbite coming. You are gleefully bigoted if you have a problem with any of this. Then she pivots off to railing against white men and right-wing conspiracy theories and mocking thoughts and prayers and talking about weapons of war. This guy beat her to death. There was no gun involved. She is just invoking other villains of other, in this case, like hypothetical incidents as a means of avoiding talking about the actual thing that happened to an actual woman in her actual jurisdiction. Because she is so filled with hate, talk about hate, for people that she opposes politically, that she can't even have a remotely adult conversation about an absolute atrocity that just happened in her backyard where she's supposed to represent the people who live there. I wonder how many of them feel represented by Melissa Link listening to that. And as I referenced, there's more. She wasn't done. Cut 42.
We live in a violent patriarchal society in which even our own bodies are not our own. A society in which desperate mothers are sent home from emergency rooms to suffer unassisted miscarriages as they bleed out on their bathroom floors, and raped little girls are forced to give birth to their stepdaddy's babies. In which at least 2 of our Supreme Court justices have been credibly accused of sexual assault, and at least 3 were appointed by a traitorous, insurrectionist, bigoted, lying, cheating, fraudulent, philandering rapist. I call upon those who are so overcome with outrage over Laken Riley's death to channel that outrage towards protecting the living.
Protecting the living, yeah, sure. I mean, you got an absolute lie smear of Brett Kavanaugh and Clarence Thomas in there. You got Donald Trump in there. You got a completely invented abortion position. I mean, she was like hitting the bingo card. Disgusting. That's not some random person ranting on the internet. That is a commissioner of the county where the murder happened, where she wants to talk about anything but, apparently, the murder of Laken Riley and who did it and what policies allowed that to happen, Melissa. Whose policies? This was brought to my attention by someone that we just recently had on the show, the former student body president of the University of Georgia, who graduated summa cum laude. Now he's a member of the legislature down there in Atlanta, House District 120, State Representative Houston Gaines back with us. I don't even know where to begin. I've said my piece, I think, so far here, sir, and I just wonder, as an individual who's elected in the state of Georgia, someone who loves Athens, loves the university, and is so upset by what happened, as you listen to what we just heard, and again, you flagged it for us through a mutual friend from Melissa Link, I just want to get your reaction.
Guy, I was sitting there. I live in Athens, born and raised in Athens, and honored to represent Athens. And, community I love. Obviously, as you know, we have just been struck with tragedy. You and I talked about it last week, and it's just awful what happened to Laken Riley. And there was a lot of folks who came together on Tuesday night before our mayor and commission meeting to try to honor Laken and also talk about the issues that we have with our local government. And as I left that event and I got back home, I turned on the mayor and commission meeting, and I sat there and I listened as Commissioner Link said those comments, and I couldn't believe what she had said. I mean, those are just reprehensible. They're unhinged. And I was just sitting there in disbelief at what she had just said. And I went back. I said, there's no way she said what I thought she did. And I just sat there and listened to it multiple times, got angrier and angrier and angrier every time I did it. And so I decided to type out exactly what she said and put it out there for folks to know. I mean, those comments are just abhorrent, and especially for a family that has just gone through just an awful, awful 2 weeks, and just the murder of a young woman who had such a bright future ahead of her. But for those comments from a sitting county commissioner, it's just awful.
We will put the video of this deranged diatribe on my Twitter feed within the next hour at Guy P. Benson on X or Twitter. So you can see it for yourself. Not doctored, it's just right there. This is what she chose to say. And she has obviously been elected in that community. She represents some sentiment, I guess, within that community. I wonder how people are going to react to that. I also wonder, because this is the game that we get all the time on the other side of the aisle. I know that you've probably been subjected to this, Representative, which is if a Republican or a conservative says something outrageous, every other Republican and conservative is confronted with that soundbite. Will you denounce this? Will you endorse this? I wonder if any of the statewide officials, like the U.S. senators or any of the prominent Democrats in Georgia, are going to be asked about whether they agree with Melissa Link, because that could be a bit of a minefield for them, given all the boxes she was checking. But it's still, I think, to most people, and you can talk about your community, you know it far better than I do, to most people, I feel like that would be absolutely revolting, what we just heard.
I think so, too. In fact, after I got it, I sent it to some Democrat friends of mine, and I said, do you think this is as crazy as I do? Or, and they totally agreed. It's unbelievable. And I think your point, Guy, locally and statewide, Democrats need to be able to answer to this question. Do they agree with what Commissioner Link said? They need to condemn those comments. And to your point about her being represented in our community, in fact, the person she followed on our county commission moved on to, a higher calling. She was actually in Atlanta today protesting the Cop City, what she says is Cop City blocking traffic for 3 hours in Atlanta today. So it's just, we've seen in Athens over several years where we've had this movement of progressive individuals who've gotten elected to our local government and taken our local government to this place where many of us have been concerned for years that we were going to see something really bad happen in our community because
Yep.
of the policies implemented. And it's just, you see firsthand the type of people that have been elected in Clark County, and it's really, really disappointing as somebody, again, who's been born and raised there and loves that community.
Yep. And as I watch this from this woman, Melissa Link, it's like if someone that disturbed and twisted can get herself elected, it's not surprising that now Athens has become a sanctuary jurisdiction. Policies that directly aided this crime. Unfortunately, that's the reality. I understand why she probably doesn't want to grapple with that or deal with that. So she wanted to talk about everything else, exposed herself in the process. And I would love to know around the state of Georgia how many elected Democrats agree or disagree with her. That's a question that ought to be asked.
I think they're making $1 million going.
Yeah, and more, a couple of them are out there raping and murdering.
Whoa. Allegedly.
And those kind of programs, because I feel like it is discriminatory to just focus on sports. And, I'd like to see some data as to outcomes regarding kids who are in sports versus kids who are engaged in those other alternative, more creative and brain-oriented topics. I'd love to see these kids using their brains rather than just kicking the ball around. We're unfortunate to live in interesting times in which agents of chaos and conspiracy theorists fall in line behind criminal fabulists and take aim at our institutions, seek to hollow them out and destroy our democracy and make way for, what is intended to be fascism. And unfortunately, those agents have gotten hold of forces within this community, even within this government, and I'm sorry to see that you've become the target of that, and some of the rest of us have become the target of that. I hope we can overcome it, and I hope that some of these people come to their senses. I hope this community comes to its senses and overcomes some of this, and I think it's up to us as leaders to fight back against it. And Blaine, you will be severely missed.